Hi, my name's Mark, and I'm here to talk to you about a couple of important things. One is, I got the U.S. Census, and I was a little confused about something, and so I started to do a little research. And what I want to talk to you today about is the difference between Spanish, Hispanic, Latino, and what all that means. And what I'm trying to do is educate the general public on those three categories and why the U.S. government has lumped them all together. So what I have here is map 1. And basically, it's a printout of the U.S. Census, and it's the questionnaire, and it says, I'll read it to you, is Mark Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? And you basically check it off. So what does origin mean? Well, basically origin means, where do I come from? What is my heritage? Where do my people come from? So for me, I'm half Italian, half Irish. That's why I talk with my hands. So if I was to do a DNA test, my DNA test would show that I am from Ireland and from Italy. And that's pretty important, and I'm going to tell you that later on. We'll come back to that. But my ancestors have been around for thousands of years, back to the days of the Romans, back to the time of Jesus Christ. And we'll get back to that. There's a reason for that. So basically, what are you? What is Hispanic? What is Latino? And what is Spanish? So now, I guess there's two questions you should ask. If you're in one of those three categories, the questions you should ask, I think, that are important is, if you did a DNA test, what would the results of that test show you? Number one, would it bring you to like Mexico or Puerto Rico or to the Caribbean or to Spain? And those things are critical. So I'm going to show you a series of maps, and those maps are going to focus on Mexico, Central and South America. And the reason I picked those areas is because there's a lot of data on those areas. For instance, in Mexico, we know that Spain invaded Mexico in 1521, and they stayed approximately 300 years before the Mexicans finally kicked them out. But in those 300 years, the Spaniards had a lot of influence over the Mexicans. So they actually taught them Spanish. And let me tell you, back in those days, they didn't have, little huts where they said, okay, you're teaching in hut number 1, Spanish 101 is being taught there. No, back in those days, they were very brutal. There was beheadings, they were cutting out tongues, and there was all kinds of horrendous acts going on. So they were either forced to speak Spanish or they suffered brutal consequences. And the Spaniards did other things. They destroyed artifacts. They just destroyed the cultures of the indigenous people of those areas. So that's what the Spaniards did. And you'll see on map 2, if I could show you map 2. Now, this is a small map, but at the time, if you look at this map, Mexico was called the Great Aztec Empire. Now, prior to 1521, before the Spaniards got there, I can guarantee you that there was not one person with the last name Rodriguez, Velasquez, Cortez. So going back to what I said earlier, when you take that DNA test, that shows you exactly where you're from. Now, prior to Spain coming, as I said, it was called the Great Aztec Empire. And now there was three tribes of people in that area. There was the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Incas. Now, I hate to use this term because, again, this is one of those terms, but basically, you were called Native American Indians. I know Indians is, kind of a not so nice name to be called, but you were Native Americans. And America was made up of Canada, the United States, and what is now called Mexico. But that's basically what you are. If you consider yourself Spanish and you're now in Mexico, you've only been Spanish since 1521 when the Spaniards invaded. So, you can embrace that Spanish heritage or the Spanish origin, but from then till now, that's only 500 years. So that's why I say it's important when you look at your heritage and your origin. Most people can say, my people, for example, for me, the Irish and the Italians, we go back thousands and thousands of years. So to go back 500 years is really not your origin. Your origin is Native American Indian in Mexico. So it's really not Spanish. Spanish is the language that you speak. It's not really your blood. So why was all this done? When you look at a map of Europe, I picked out 3 countries. And the reason I picked out these 3 countries was that they were all close together. So 3 countries are Spain, obviously, Italy, and Portugal. Now, if you look at them, especially Portugal is right on the border of Spain. And then Italy is the next country over. And they're all on the same lines of latitude. And the reason I picked lines of latitude is because when you look at latitude, it normally delineates usually the skin tone, the color of the skin, because as you get closer to the equator, you can get darker skin. So those 3 countries are pretty important. So I'm going to give you some facts on those 3 countries and what their impact is on the United States. And so here they are. In Italy, there's 60 million people, and worldwide, there's only 61 million people that speak Italian. In Portugal, there's or I should say Portugal/Brazil, and about 8 other countries speak Portuguese. And there's 200 million people that speak Portuguese worldwide. And then in the Spanish-speaking world, globally, there's 20 countries that speak Spanish. And the total of Spanish-speaking people globally is between 470 and 500 million. Now, I'm going to come back to where I started in the beginning with that U.S. Census report and why that's important. In that U.S. Census report, they talk about a minority. Now, why is that important? Because a minority, according to Webster's, a minority is the lesser part or smaller number, less than half of a total, of a group or party or fraction with a smaller number of votes than the majority. A racial, religious, ethnic, or political group smaller than and differing from the controlling group. So, Why go through all this trouble? Why did the U.S. government, per se, lump all these people together and call them a minority, when in fact, the numbers don't justify it? They're all within the same lines of latitude. Skin tone is relatively the same, yet 60 million Italians, 200 million Portuguese, 500 million Spanish-speaking people. So in these three categories, Spanish-speaking people are not the minority, they're the majority. So why would the U.S. government put them as a minority? If anything, the Italians should be the minority. So I think, in my opinion, one simple answer. It's votes. The votes. The Democrats want the votes of the Spanish community, the Hispanic community. And to me, Hispanics and Latinos are not actually Spanish. They speak Spanish, but they're not really Spanish. Their origin is really either in the Caribbean, they're Caribbean, as far as Puerto Rico, South America, Mexico. They're Native Americans, just like our Native Americans are here. And a couple of tidbits of information for you. If you were to look at an old Western movie, look at the credits. At the end of the movie, you could see that a lot of Indians were played by Mexican people as well as real-life Native Americans here. Another interesting fact, the top 3 Spanish-speaking countries in the world today, number 1 is Mexico, number 2, you guessed it, the United States, number 3 is Colombia, and number 4 is Spain. So Spain don't even make the top 3. So that kind of wraps it up for me here today. I think you have a lot to think about. I think really the key question is, why was all this done all these years? And for me, the answer is pretty clear. I think it was done to get your vote. And I think the wool has been pulled over your eyes for a long time. I think you really should think about what it is. And if you're really curious, get a DNA test. I mean, I think that's going to really answer a lot of questions. Do you have Spanish in your blood? You might have some, but if it's more than 25%, I don't think so. I don't think so. But thank you for your time, and hope you have a great day, and vote Republican. Thank you.